Prop making. So for prop making, I made 3 weapons. The first here was a MP40, which was used by Arjun. I here am cutting out the base of the trigger mechanism, which I then actually cut out 6 versions of if you're using this one to trace it. Here you can see what it looked like when it was all done being cut out. After that, I decided to cut out a hole after tracing one for where I wanted the trigger to go. Now 4 of them looked like this, where they just had the hole, and 2 of them, which I ended up gluing to in the middle using hot glue, which is how I constructed all the guns, actually had the trigger function itself. Now this is what it looked like when it was all done. There's the comparison there of what the real thing looked like of an MP40 from the World War II German Army. Here is an M3A1 grease gun used by the Americans and David in the short film. This one was the first gun that I built using cardboard, hot glue, a plastic bottle, paper, a chopstick, and then the stock is a clothing wire. It actually ended up breaking during the film. The barrel snapped off because it was just glue on flat surface. The other gun also had a little piece on the side snap off, which wasn't anything major. This here is a Magnum 357 Magnum that was used. I actually originally was just a water gun that I had. It was camo, so I painted it to be a little more realistic. This here's the fake blood I made using corn syrup, chocolate syrup, clear dish soap, and some red food coloring. When in the short film, I actually applied it with a turkey baster. Now these are the costumes here. On the left there is what David wore, on the right is what Parker wore. They were the American soldiers, just very standard green clothing, just some utility belt. Here's the German soldiers. Now the right one was actually a really good find. It was a trench coat that looked quite like what the soldiers would wear during the colder months. They were all purchased from Tully's thrift store except the helmets, which I actually only had 2 of them from Spirit Halloween. Pre-production. Now pre-production was time consuming. I had built the props, the guns, and I did all the painting. I built the costumes after going out and getting those, and then after I'd done that, I decided to write out the entire thing as a story so that all the guys could read that and know what was going to happen instead of me writing a script with all of the different motions of what they were going to do when on camera. After that, I made a shot list of everything that I wanted to film on camera from all the different angles, of all the different places, of all the different scenes, so that I had more than enough footage to construct everything. Now, during production itself, I had somebody behind me with the camera showing what I was doing, just how I was doing. This was the opening shot there, and in the bottom left you'll see what it actually looked like on the film. Quite different from what it looked like too after color correction there. And this was the shot of Parker being upset with his cards while they were playing poker. Now this here was just a nice slow in shot of Parker going to sit down. The stabilizer was a huge help while doing this because of how stable it made everything. This was actually the application with the turkey baster I was talking about earlier.
So cool! Sorry.
Now, post-production. So the biggest thing with post-production was taking something that looked like this and then turning it into something that looked like this. That there's the sequence of everything done once I was completed. This first clip here is an example of the visual effects I added in with keyframing and timing. It's just David with the muzzle flash. This here was... So that second bit there was what everything sounded like. Of course, it slowed down because the clip's length is actually pretty short. It took a lot of layers of audio to make the sound design because of how quiet everything was to begin with. So I had added in everything from tree creaking to trees rustling in the wind to birds chirping in the background, although they go away after the shooting starts because of course they would fly away. and right down to the gun sounds themselves. So this next bit here, I'll be quiet, is comparison of what the audio sounded like before versus after everything got added in. So as you can tell, with all of the background sound and the music, it creates an ambience that makes it more believable and more realistic. Now this here is the reticle that I created to be an imitation sniper scope. Now I filmed this with a 250mm lens opposed to the 50mm lens I was filming with everything else, so it had the 5 times zoom on it. It was layering of a PNG as well as a Gaussian blur to create that blurry effect around the outside, and a mask to create that circular image in the middle, with feathering on the outside of it to make that blurriness of what wouldn't have been in focus on the sniper scope. And the last clip I have here is just a comparison of some of the color corrections, so making the whites whiter, the darks darker, creating a little bit more contrast, but also taking away exposure so that it gets that dark look to the clips, so they have that more real look. I also made everything warmer because I wanted to give it the effect of either early in the morning or later in the day, because the soldiers have been traveling all day, just to create that headcanon of it's either early or late because these men are tired. So thank you for listening. This was the behind the scenes of Not All Wounds Heal, just a little look back on everything that I did. I hope you enjoyed. Thanks.